There are a few people that know more about LinkedIn than Mandy McEwen, CEO of ModGirl Marketing. In this episode, I sit down and I talk with Mandy about how she grew her agency into a specialty boutique service that helps brands and individuals find their voice and leverage their organic reach. Most marketers know that LinkedIn has an amazing platform for brand building, but so many sales and marketing teams really get it wrong or they don't know how to get started. In this discussion, we explore some of the most common mistakes of posting on LinkedIn, how to avoid them, and how to build the best possible connections for you, your team, and your brand. Let's get into it.
I started my agency, ModGirl Marketing, back in 2010. And we were a full service agency, but really focused on organic marketing. So I'm big on blogging, SEO friendly blogging, social content, thought leadership, etc. And then we decided to go all in on the LinkedIn realm, or maybe not all in, but pretty much pretty heavy in LinkedIn now. And the reason is because I've personally used it for my agency to grow over the last decade. I have a couple of successful courses that I launched back in 2017, and then I caught the attention of LinkedIn's very own marketing team. So they've been inviting me to collaborate with them the last few years. I've been hosting webinars for them, going to their live events they invited me to, etc. And then right before COVID hit, actually, we decided we really want to focus on LinkedIn. And then the pandemic hit, and we were like, well, we really do need to focus on this because there's a massive need.
Yep.
So many people are now online and working from home. So we launched our brand Luminetics, ModGirl brand, earlier this year. And so we now provide LinkedIn strategy, consulting, training to B2B enterprises. So we work with a lot of sales teams, marketing teams, and work from a thought leadership perspective as well. So we're really big on humanizing brands. And there's no better way to do that than, in my opinion, from a B2B perspective, than leveraging LinkedIn to do that because it's such a gold mine. There's so much opportunity right now. So I am kind of known as the LinkedIn girl. So that's my jam, and that's what I love.
Yeah, I think it's probably the best description I've had a guest give with what they do and why they love it. And the thing here, you guys are really at sort of this really awesome intersection, right? So COVID happened, everything sort of got accelerated. All of the things that we should have been doing, back in 2017, 2018, we were forced to do in 2020 in March, and everything got accelerated. Everything got fast forwarded. There were brands that took a really hard, big hit. There are brands that just really rocketed to the front, and I still maintain to this day, and if you've ever, anybody's ever listened to any of the other episodes that we've done, I sort of rail on the concept of, we are humans connecting with other humans and, doing like just the standard trade show approach, or the standard, outbound sales motion approach where we're, just cold calling on people is just a recipe for really high CAC and, really sort of non-scalable, long-term marketing. And I just, what you guys are doing is exactly front and center, I think, of what people should be doing, especially in B2B SaaS, which is the majority of our audience. So it's just, you recognized it, you jumped on it, and you've just done a fantastic job. So this is going to be a LinkedIn centered conversation. So we'll start, sort of just dive in, and we'll just talk about, like, what are we doing today as brands to be able to leverage LinkedIn?
Well, what are we doing or what are we not doing?
That's a great point. So let's start with what do we need to do, and then let's start with what do we need to do. And then what are some of the areas that you feel like, you're still seeing shortfalls or things that need to improve or close the gap on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can kind of answer that in like one sentence, right? So what a lot of companies are doing now on LinkedIn, and really any social media network, but because we're talking about B2B here, and LinkedIn is the most crucial channel for B2B, obviously everyone knows that. And what I'm seeing a lot of, and this is typical, is just your typical, let's link to white papers and blogs and and downloads and webinars and whatever. And it's just lacking kind of this humanized element as far as the content goes. And so it's just your typical corporate content is what I like to call it, right? It's corporatized. And it just lacks that human element that's needed to get people excited and feel some sort of emotion and want to actually engage. And so from a content perspective, what brands need to be doing is posting more humanized content. So leveraging the human beings within their organization, getting them on video, getting them on camera, getting their thoughts on certain topics, posting more unique type of polls, for example, a carousel post. I mean, we could talk in a second about what works well on LinkedIn content, but just broadly speaking, from what's not working is just your typical run-of-the-mill corporate content, and that's what most people are doing. And there's nothing wrong with having that, but you got to sprinkle it in with some actual content that people want. Like give the people what they want. Like they want value, they want to learn, they want to feel emotions, and so it's not all about. We just need to educate them 24/7. Like people like to laugh too, like throw some humor in there, And so it's finding ways to stand out. And when companies do this, especially when we work with B2B SaaS companies, because a lot of their competitors look all the same. If you go to their LinkedIn pages, it's like the typical content. And so when you approach it with a different strategic mind, you're going to stand out. And it's just one of those things where you have to be trying new things, and you have to be looking at it from the customer's perspective too, of like, would I find this valuable? Like, would this be something that I would want to comment on? And if not, then, well, there's your answer,
Yeah. You can absolutely tell the difference between content that was put up for lead generation sake and content that was real and authentic and has an opinion and takes a stance on something, right? I mean, and it doesn't necessarily, require you to form fill at the end of it, right? And so I think there are marketers all over that recognize right? Right? They know they're doing it. And so it's very easily seen for what it is. And so what ends up happening is, it absolutely, like right out of the gate, you turn somebody off to your brand, as opposed to being real and authentic, the way that you were just describing. So I'm curious, obviously, you are super plugged into LinkedIn and the community. Who are some folks that people should be potentially following that are writing this type of content that they could go and check out? You have anybody in mind?
Yeah. So one of my friends, Chris Walker, we actually hung out in San Diego a couple weeks ago. We were both speakers at Traffic and Conversion Summit. So we both have similar, we both work with B2B SaaS. We do slightly different things, but he's a great example of someone, and you can even look at their company page, Refine Labs, of people that are, and he's getting more of his employees involved, and so he's a great example of leveraging LinkedIn the right way. And they have a podcast, and so that's another thing too, is you have to empower your people to use this platform. And that's why we exist too, and we do that. And so you also have to give your team members what they need to be successful on LinkedIn, because it's not just about, we're talking about company pages right now, right? And that's still super important and all, but people do business with people, just like what you mentioned earlier, right? Like we're not doing business with logos. And we all have people that are like the faces of the business, whether that's sales reps, executives, marketers, CEOs. I mean, in most companies, there's a decent amount of customer facing people, right? And so you need to empower your people to leverage LinkedIn and give them what they need, invest in their personal brands, and that's what we do. We have this entire LinkedIn profile makeover system for teams. And we get these companies who are innovative and doing major things and talk about making your employees happy when they're like, by the way, we're investing a decent chunk here in your own personal brand. It's going to help you, but it's going to help us too. And you're going to keep this with you for the life of your career, And so it's empowering these team members to leverage LinkedIn, not just from their profile, but how do you post? How do you do this? And giving them the freedom to post their own content within certain parameters. Obviously, I understand that there's, legal, and we have certain things we got to follow by, totally fine. But also empowering them to, hey, we want you to be sharing content. We want you to be posting content and becoming a thought leader, And so it's the companies that have the people within them that are doing that, and encouraging that, instead of just being like, hey, you should use LinkedIn, good luck, go do it. It's just not going to work if you're not giving people the resources, and the strategies to make it happen.
I want to talk about really quickly the employee empowerment thing. I know like a lot of execs or, and managers are, super like leery of letting people do that, right? I mean, for obvious reasons, right? You don't want somebody to come along and poach your people. But to me, there's a larger issue if that's your primary concern, right? For somebody or against somebody, actually posting on LinkedIn. Like you've got bigger, like more deep-seated problems in the org if, right? If you don't have or if you're worried about that sort of thing. And so, one of the things that I am looking for is a way to be able to sort of encourage and empower my team to be able to go and start sharing and creating their own thoughts, in LinkedIn. I was kind of curious, like, do you have like a, maybe not every step or anything, but like a summary of why somebody should do that on their own?
It helps when you give them something to work with instead of just saying, we think you should start posting, like go get it.
Yep.
Right. So like
Yep.
we're working with marketing teams to like get content for them to choose from, and we're telling them what to share. Right. And so going back to your original question, LinkedIn is only as great as you make it. And with only 1% of people consistently posting on a platform that has 760 plus million users, there is a massive opportunity. This is not Instagram. This is not Facebook. There's actually not a whole lot of people posting quality quality content consistently on the platform. There's just not. And so there's a massive opportunity to do that. And so it's going to help the company. It's going to help you. But it's one of those things where if you're using Sales Navigator, which we train on, right, and you're building out targeted lists of people that you want to connect with, what do you think your chances are if they land on your profile and they see that you post really great content on a consistent basis? Consistent could be once a week. I mean, I'm not even talking about every day here. Every day is awesome, but you don't have to do it every day, right? But if they're going to land on your profile and it's an optimized profile and they see that you're posting valuable content, and then let's say they land on another rep, let's say you're an SDR, right? Another SDR's profile, competition, you guys do the same thing, and their profile is a little weak and they haven't posted in over a year, you're gonna get them. Your chances of getting them to reply to you are so much greater than Mr. Joe Blow SDR who hasn't posted in, a year. So there's just like so many like brand building, thought leadership aspects. But in addition to that, and just looking good and looking like an authoritative figure, which is what we all want. So the whole point of doing this on LinkedIn is we want people to trust you and see you as a trusted advisor. Like you want to be the person who provides value and insights first, and not just another person trying to land, a new client. So that, but not to mention, like, let's talk about the fact that hardly anyone is posting quality content consistently. So when you do that, it's just a snowball effect. The more you start doing it, the more people start seeing it. And then the more people are commenting on it, you're going to have your secondary connections, like showing up in other people's feeds. They're going to see it. And so it's just like this perpetual growth of motion from posting thought leadership, valuable content.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I've been seeing posts about how LinkedIn is somehow been saturated recently, and I said, I made a comment. I said, it is the least saturated platform on the planet, and
totally,
you're talking about between 1% and 2% of like original content that's actually being produced to that sort of audience. The reach is phenomenal, and the genuine conversations that you can have with people that are in your space is really amazing. It is. And I say this a lot. I say it a lot on this show too, but marketing can be a lonely job, right? You're fighting against a lot of times, for budget from the CFO, and you're fighting with IT, trying to get things done, and, landing pages built or DevOps or something, right? You're fighting with, sales pretty much consistently.
Right.
And you're having, you're always sort of like up against these things. You're always behind on your numbers most often anyway. Right. You're always sort of feeling like you're working uphill. And so, LinkedIn is actually a really good place to have genuine conversations without a motive. And actually have genuine conversations and participate in conversations that somebody else has started, where you can sort of chime in and set yourself apart. Because again, sort of like going back to what I was saying earlier about, sort of just trying to collect MQLs, you can absolutely tell when there's a genuine sort of connection or relationship, that you are developing versus somebody who wants something from you as well, right? And by the way, this absolutely goes for sales. This absolutely goes for sales. I love how you were saying earlier, like we do this, this process where we go through and we do your LinkedIn profile and we optimize it. It made me chuckle a little bit when you said that, because when I first stood up our sales team for the ads business, we had 8 BDRs and a couple of AEs. And one of the BDRs had his LinkedIn profile. I'm not going to mention which one, but his LinkedIn profile was, literally like, SDR. And, his profile picture was him standing at a trade show, like in front of his booth with his little tag on,
Amazing.
And then
Amazing.
this is like trying to, like have, go and have a date with a girl and just show up when, just the rattiest outfit you could possibly have, and, no money and, a beat up car. And it's just not the best way to put yourself forward. And I'm proud of them now. I really am, because what they've been able to do since, like, they actually are sort of keying off of some of the content that we're doing on our page. And then they are developing their own spin or their own take on that. And they hated it at first. They hated it at first because it was such a pain for them, and they're not writers. And I got all of this feedback, and, and I said, look, just trust me, first of all. And secondly, it's now your job to go and do this. Right. So I actually made it part of the process.
Good.
But the thing that sold them on it, right. You're selling to sales guys, right. But the thing that sold them on it was saying, look, if the number of demos that you are going to be able to book, or the number of meetings that you're going to be able to book, is, I'm making this number up, but let's say it's 15 a month now. And if I could tell you that I can get you to 20, right, by this one tactic that takes you 30 minutes a day, would you do it? All of a sudden, like, the dynamic shifted, and they're like, well, what could I be writing about? Right. What could I be, trying to go and what could I key off of? What are the things that we should be talking about? All of that kind of stuff. And it's been fun. It's just been fun to watch that progression over the last 9 months or so, 9 or 10 months. So
That's
it
awesome.
totally works.
Yeah.
And
It's
sounds
funny
like,
you mention that, because I literally am like, they should not even know that you're in sales. Like, when they land on your profile, like, they have to do some digging before they realize that you're in sales. Like, don't put it in your headline. Don't ever put the word business development or sales in your headline, unless you're like a VP,
that's a good
right?
way
That's
to
different.
get banned right out of the gate.
Yes, exactly. And so my whole thing is like,
absolutely.
you just want people to see you as a trusted resource. Like, you can still be a thought leader and be in sales. Like, you just don't want to come across as like the sales guy or the sales girl, So that's funny you mentioned that, because you're right. A lot of them, like that guy you mentioned, there's a lot of them out there, they just need some help. That's all.
Well, and it's not because, it's simply one thing, and it's that they don't realize how powerful it could be and how to.
They don't
best
know.
utilize it.
They don't know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden, when you educate them to that, or you make them aware of it, all of a sudden, like, the light bulb goes on. The problem I have is with folks that have these courses out there that teach you how to do it the wrong way. Right.
Yeah.
And everybody knows sort of what those things are, and they're out there, and I'm sort of the victim of them, because I get those DMs every single day, and you absolutely can tell. Like, I am a lot of people's ICP right now. Right. So I'm taking over a marketing team, in a leadership role. I own a budget that's, fairly decent. I'm changing my job title, right? There's all of these things that are like setting off signals all over the place right now, I'm sure. And I absolutely can tell you without a doubt, I will not respond to any of them, like anybody that does that kind of outreach. If somebody wants to have a conversation, or they want to look to improve, or there's some genuine sort of like give and take, absolutely. Let's have that conversation, But, the standard sort of formulaic approach that you sort of see.
Because they're all just blasting it. It's a numbers game, right? And so what we do is we have this system that we train our clients on, that especially when it comes to outreach and the BDRs and SDRs, is you engage with people ahead of time, right? So you have a list of people that you want to go after. You go and you engage. If they're posting content, obviously if they're not, then you engage with them in their comments. But let's say they're posting content, you go and engage with 1 to 3 of their posts, leave a meaningful comment, like it, wait a few days, send a custom connection request, mention the content that you engaged with, and then you want to connect, toot their horn, make them feel good, and send a connection request. Like, it's super simple. And then you just start a conversation, ask a question, ask how you can help them. Like, you should never be pitching or even saying, what you do until you start and, until you earn that. It's like you earn the right to the conversation by helping them, and if they're not posting content, go and look at where they're commenting. Look at, their engagement, look at their activity, like find something to do ahead of time so they are familiar with your name before you go and reach out to them. It's so simple, but most people aren't doing it.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And that's just yet one more way, just, because for the same reason why you post on LinkedIn, there's a tremendous amount of reach, but for sales reps, there is tremendous opportunity, and most are not doing it. And of the subset of the people that are doing it, most are not doing it. It takes a little bit of reprogramming,
100%.
Especially if an SDR, BDR, they've got it's all, it's not just the individual, it's actually reprogramming the org, right?
Yeah.
Around expectations and what those KPIs that they need to be hitting are and everything else, right? There's some strategic things that need to happen as well to sort of make sure that people understand, how to sort of do it right and set everybody up for success.
Well, and a lot of the challenge too is like you go into these organizations and they're leveraging automation. I'm preaching to the choir here with you guys. They're leveraging email automation and whatnot. And they're trained to, okay, you have a prospect, you go and you add them to the sequence, and no one is going to respond to those emails. They're so salesy. And so it's completely changing all of that. Like, no, do not send automated emails. Everything needs to be customized and personalized, And so it's just that mindset shift. You're right. And it starts at the top. It's not just the mindset of the SDRs, It's like, let's change how things are, like, let's change how you guys are telling your reps to handle business. Like, this all has to change, And so we're coming in, we're literally transforming this entire process for the teams. And so it's like slowing down things to speed up the results. And so you don't need to blast out 100 emails a day. All you need to do is be way more strategic and more personalized, and you're going to get far greater results, and it's way less stressful.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back. I love that, by the way. I think that's exactly the right approach. And I think it really does sort of go back to, like, if you're trying to develop an actual genuine friendship or relationship with somebody, it is a different approach than you do when you're, just sort of going and hitting numbers and the shift in your mind. It is the future of a successful BDR. At the end of the day, 100%. The ones that are going to win are going to employ this type of strategy as opposed to, dialing for dollars. And I think, at the end of the day, that's sort of the takeaway, right? Is you've got to have, you start with the org, sort of transforming and getting buy-in at that, at the management level, and then working that into the sort of the fabric or the DNA of the team itself.
Yeah, totally. And real quick story. So this came to mind when we were talking here about this. I'm training a sales team right now, cybersecurity, and we are on week 2, and we were talking today about, if someone sends you a connection request, how to handle it. So you say thank you, ask how you can help, and if you want, you can mention a little bit about what you do, and if you can help them, let you know, but it shouldn't be a sales pitch at all. And he was like, well, they're reaching out to me. He literally said this. He's like, well, if they're sending me a connection request, why can't I sell them? Why can't I send them a pitch? And I'm like, that's not how it works, And so I was like, because we want to build real relationships. Like, just because they're asking to connect with you doesn't mean that they're interested in your services. But even if they are, you still shouldn't pitch them right away. You should ask the question and get the dialogue started, and then you go from it, And so again, it's this mindset thing where they're reaching out to me. Of course, I'm going to tell them, I'm going to send them a little pitch, Like, no. Like, we got to stop doing that. Like, abort mission. Like, you need to
Resist
stop
the
doing
temptation.
that.
Yes,
Yes,
resist the
resist the
temptations.
temptation.
That's right.
Yeah, that's all they
Well, that's
know, right? A lot of these VDRs and
that
SDRs,
is.
that's all they know. So
Yeah.
it's changing
Well, it's
that.
also how they're comped.
Yeah,
Truthfully,
100%.
like it's human
100%.
nature, right? It's totally
Yeah.
human nature when you say, look, I need you to book 15 demos a month. And of
Mhm.
those 15 demos that you need to book, right, you need to have them landed, and attended, in this given 30-day period. Giving them that mindset and compensating them around it is just setting yourself up for failure as management. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I think we did that was relatively smart. I don't know. I mean, if what you think, I'm curious to hear what your take is, but what we did is we took our BDRs and we actually put them into pods, of 4 that work directly with their AE. And then we compensate them based on 2 things: closed won, all the way down to closed won, which freaked them out at the beginning, right? Totally did. And then second was an individual contributorship to the number of book demos in that given month, right? And so all of a sudden it shifted sort of the mentality of like, I've just got to, cram people in no matter how crappy they are. And they're not necessarily in my ICP and definitely not going to be sales accepted, but what the heck do I care? Right. Like it actually put them into a position where they were working together as a team and they were training each other on best practices, working together with the AE, who obviously was doing the demos, and he was bringing some of them on to sort of like show them what was working and what wasn't working so that they could continue to refine. And then, on the comp side, I'm just letting human nature do its thing. Right. And so, I'm only looking at what's closed won, creating a pool of dollars around that. And then within that, their individual contributorship for how big of a, contribution did they have to the ultimate number of deals that they closed. I'll be honest, like it did take a little bit of selling on my part to put it together. Right. And get them to sort of wrap their heads around a little bit. And they were definitely skeptical. But I got to tell you, like, every month is better than the last. And they,
I like it.
The leading indicators of like what, you're looking for, higher close rates, deals that are closing more in month, right? More that are getting sales accepted, things, where, they're hitting their target and they're not 50% of their target. Like all of those things, like those leading indicators that sort of show that, we're sort of on the right path is sort of there, which is encouraging to me.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think it's great.
One of the things that, we've sort of been talking through as we've been sort of unpacking a potential LinkedIn strategy that you could employ not only for employees, but also for, actual AEs, BDRs. We talked a little bit about both and just a sampling of both. I'm curious about like, for the people that are listening, and they're saying, well, what kind of content should I really be sort of looking at? What should I be thinking about? How do I come up with these ideas? Like, where do I generate these things? Do you have any tips for them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So as far as ideas, so your company, if you're an employee, has loads of content, right? So we always start with like the lowest hanging fruit. So let's look at the content you already have and see what we can repurpose and turn it into more humanized content. What I do is I save. So if you're browsing LinkedIn's feed and you come across posts you like, if you click the 3 buttons at the top, it's like the top right corner, there's 3 buttons. If you click that, there's a drop down that where you can save it. And so if you can do this on Facebook and Instagram too, right? There's just like these little buttons where you can save content and then you can go and look at your saved content. So what I do is I will do this on LinkedIn and I'll go, and then when I write my content for the week, I will go and I will look at all those saved posts and then it'll give me ideas, right? And so other people. So the thing with thought leadership content is no one is really creating like these thoughts that no one came up with before, right? Like we aren't like going out there and coming up with these groundbreaking thoughts that like no one thought of before. Like that's not what this is like. So you leverage what's out there, like leverage people that you follow, leverage industry influencers and competitors even, and look at what's happening. Look at the trends and what's going on, what people are talking about. Buyer personas, right? Your ICPs and their pain points. I mean, that's the best place. Like go look at all the information you have on your ICPs and what questions they're asking sales reps and marketing, right? And so it's like those pain points, those questions that come up, that's like a gold mine, right? Customer stories are a gold mine also. So taking case studies and like weaving them in. The videos are obviously incredible. And so these are just like subject matters, but when it comes to the actual like posts that do well on LinkedIn, there is a hierarchy, if you will, of like the algorithm and what they like. Number one, which love them or hate them, polls. Polls are crushing it on LinkedIn, and they have been forever. The algorithm loves them. People love them. Every time I post a poll, I get at least 50,000 views. My highest one has 150,000 views. So polls are awesome. You can use them as lead gen tools too. This is why I love polls, not because they do so well in the algorithm and people love them, but I have landed so many clients from polls, and it's simple. So you have an industry related poll, and you send it to a targeted group of people. So in my case, it was technology. It was SaaS CMOs, actually, that I sent a poll to. And it was super simple. It was like, hey, Tim, hope you're doing well. I recently posted a poll that I think you might be interested in. Would love your one-click vote. And you just put the URL and you send it to them. And you do this over and over again to all the targeted, and it boom. So they like kind of feel special because you're inviting them to contribute. You know, you want their thoughts. And then if the timing is right, which happens to me, like, oh, it's funny you should send this to me. We were actually just talking about LinkedIn training for our team. You know what I mean? So like it is the easiest, least salesy way that you could generate leads and prospects for your company, you know? And so I love polls. The second one that works really well are those carousel posts. And so here's another lead gen tip. So if you guys have white papers and lead magnets, it's super simple. Just take like the key pieces, like don't give away the farm, obviously, if you still have a lot of gated content that you want, you know, to send people to and get their email. Take some key pieces that still tease them and go to Canva, for example. You could do this anything, but Canva is super easy. And you just create these like a PDF. They're like little, you know, square, make it pretty, aesthetically pleasing, put big fonts on there, and just put like key tips, right? And people can like swipe through them. And at the end, you can have a call to action to download the full report. And then they can click the link in the comments, you know? And so those two types of posts right now are crushing it on LinkedIn. And they do really, really well. Obviously, I'm a huge proponent of video. There's no better way, in my opinion, to build thought leadership than getting on camera. So I love leveraging video inside organizations. I love getting some people that are comfortable on camera, you know, don't force anyone to do it if they don't want to do it. That never works well. But if you have people that are willing to hop on camera and talk about things, like that's incredible, you know? So anytime you can leverage video, better. LinkedIn Live works really well. But the thing with videos, your views aren't going to be nearly as high as some other things, but it doesn't matter because it's so powerful, right? So those three are my favorite, and then just your typical images and, you know, even your OG posts. But the key with any post, and marketers know this, is the hook, right? It's same with like a blog post or a subject line in email. Like you have to hook them in. And so like the first sentence is key on LinkedIn. So you want them to click that read more button because that is an algorithm factor. So whenever the algorithm sees that people are clicking read more, that tells them that, wow, this content's good. I'm going to show it to more people in the feed. And so the algorithm pays attention to that. So you want to hook people in and entice them so they click that read more button, you know? So those are just a few
they count that as
ideas.
they count that as an engagement metric, right? Yeah,
exactly.
The read more.
Yep. 100%.
Technically it's a click, I think, but So
it is.
And then other content sources. So, you know, one of the things that I'm sort of thinking in the back of my mind, you know, in the next, you know, week or two for my new team is going to be, you know, coming up with and sourcing content that is real and authentic and not traditional, thin, weak content marketing content. And you know what I mean when I say that. I don't even have to explain it.
Yes, I do.
Right?
You
By
do.
the way,
I do.
everybody else knows exactly what I'm saying when I say that too. If it's if it feels like it's written by a content marketer, it's a waste of time, right?
Yes.
And so that is, and by the way, content. I think anybody who's listened to this thing knows I am a huge proponent of the power of content, but content for content's sake. Right, just churning something out that's not written by somebody who knows what they're talking about just comes off flat, like you're singing off key in a song, and
100%.
That is a turnoff. And you know, so I think, you know, the thing is it's not that complicated. You know, it's I don't think it's like a secret sauce or anything, right? I mean, people talk about it all the time, but then when you really got, like, when you go into a company you find very few marketing organizations or sales organizations are actually doing it. And so that would be things like going in and reading support tickets, right? Both the 5-star ones and the 1-star ones. I love reading the 1-star ones, right? Because that tells me a ton, right? Low NPS scores. I want to read every single one of those, right? Because it's great topic content for what we want to talk about. Listening to all the Gong recordings on the pre-sales, demos or meetings, with folks that are coming on and asking genuine questions about what's on their mind as they are trying to decide whether or not they want to buy something, is one of the best opportunities to be able to sort of get in the head of that person. And then same thing, across the org, right? I mean, there's tons of content just floating around. Even if you don't have anything that's pre-made, there's tons of it, right? And it's just there. You just have to know how to get to it and ask for it. And
totally. I mean, you mentioned it, like you nailed it though with the customer insights, and Chris talks about this all the time. Chris Walker, right? It's like you have to know your customer inside and out. There's no better way than to come up with content than taking it from your customer's mouth or your prospect's mouth. Like, what are they asking? What are they talking about? Like, that's your best source of content, period. So I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. So from a content or copy standpoint, Dan Kennedy or like a Perry Marshall, like one of the things that I think Perry Marshall says is he says something like, if your customers or your prospects are feeling like you're reading a page out of their diary, then you've nailed it. And I've sort of modified that, I think, a little bit along the way. And I said, if they feel like you've been sort of like reading their email back and forth to, their colleague, because that's important, right? It's their colleague, not their boss.
Yes.
Right. It's somebody that they're willing to open up a little bit and sort of share who they really are, what they're really concerned about, or what's really going on in their head. When you tap into that, it's super powerful. And you're doing them a favor, by the way, from a marketing perspective. You're actually doing them, a service by saying, this is what I understand your challenges to be, and sort of like presenting it in a way, whether that's through video or something else. So I think everything you just said is sort of like spot on, and I love your 3 tips. Those are great. So awesome.
Another content idea that I want to throw out there has to do with commenting that I wanted to talk about, right? And I'll kind of back up here, but another idea for easy content, especially for people that aren't used to posting content and maybe it's new for them, is to just start commenting on people's posts and leaving meaningful comments. And then what you do is you start a document and you just copy and paste the meaningful comments that you're leaving for people. And then you have content, and you can take those comments and turn them into your own posts on LinkedIn. And then bam, you don't have to come up with content, And so it's a lot easier for us as human beings, especially people that aren't content creators like myself, to go and just respond to something. You don't have to, your brain isn't like in that, like, oh God, I have to come up with content mode where they're like panic. And what do I do? Yeah. It's in, oh, this is a cool post. Like, I have this to say, and then bam, you have content to post. So that's something that a lot of people don't do, or they don't even think about, like when you're leaving meaningful comments. And so on that note, commenting is incredibly powerful. And I wanted to mention this while we're chatting today. And if you can leave 5 meaningful comments a day, crazy things can happen. It's insane because you're going to, again, boost your thought leadership because you're leaving meaningful comments. And by meaningful, you guys, I'm not talking about like great post, like put some thought into it, a few lines, of something. Right, exactly. Smiley face.
Emoji. Yeah.
Right. So, put a little bit of thought into it, and it's wild what can happen. So we had a client of ours, and she left a meaningful comment on an influencer's post, and it was such a great comment that within a couple hours, she had 200 new connection requests. And by the end of the day, she had 400 new connection requests. This was before the follower, creator mode, if you will. So it's wild. And those were highly targeted. Those were 400 like targeted people because the influencer was very specific that she was commenting on. So not only can you get loads of exposure, but you're doing a couple things here. You're boosting your thought leadership because you're telling you, obviously, your stuff. If you're leaving a great comment like that, you're helping the person that you're commenting on, unless they're a massive influencer, they're not probably going to notice. But if aside from like the Gary V's of the world, most of them are going to notice. And especially because we're talking about like people here, like we're using very strategic targeting. So I don't recommend going and targeting on random people like Gary Vee's stuff. That's not going to do you any good, right? If he was your target market, maybe.
Right.
But like be specific. Industry influencers, industry news, and then prospects, right? So when you're doing that, they're going to see you. They're going to notice you. You're going to help boost their feed in the algorithm. People are going to see you from that post, and you can use it as content. So there are so many benefits of leaving meaningful comments on a consistent basis. And I feel like this is so overlooked by so many people. And literally it could take you 10 minutes a day tops to do this. And the results are insane. So just a tip for everyone listening.
I love that. I mean, and one question. So I know we're going to get this one, and I'm just going to sort of frame it for whomever's listening. One of the questions that I think you probably always get when you say that is like, well, who is my audience? Right. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I think people, especially if you're in sales, let's say you're just in sales, you have tons and tons of connections that are sales people, right? SDRs, whether it's at your company or somebody else's. But that's not the content that you're going to be producing, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, what are you talking about? What, engaging with them or what? What's the question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the question really is the type of content that you're creating is not for your SDR friends, right? Or somebody that's on your team. The content you're creating is to the people that are in your ICP. It's your target audience that you are also selling to. So you can talk about sales topics. That's fine. Right. But in this particular channel for LinkedIn, you're setting yourself up, or you're trying to set yourself up as an authority in the space. You know what you're talking about. You're credible, and you have, content that is being produced that is actually helpful to the people that are in your ICP. And, I think people tend to miss that, right? So you've got, and I've seen this happen a lot, people they follow the playbook, but they forget the audience. So they go through and they start commenting on things that are sales topics. They start commenting, or they start creating content that's around, getting into the right mindset, as an SDR in the morning, and they talk about, things like that. And that is, that's great, right? That's great content. And if you want to post that, that's fine, but just know that that's not in your ICP, and it's really not going to help you land more demos. Right?
Nope. Yeah. I mean, you should only be posting stuff like that if your target audience is SDRs. You know what I mean? If you're not a sales coach, then you shouldn't. Yeah. Like if you're not a sales coach, you shouldn't really be posting about sales. Like that's nice of you to be giving those tips, but like maybe start an email newsletter for your SDR friends, because it's kind of a turnoff if I'm being honest. Like if I'm like a prospective client and I go and I'm looking at a sales rep that reached out to me and they're trying to sell a product, and I go and I look and all I see are content about sales, I'm going to be like, no, I don't want anything to do with you, So good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because you have to create content for your audience. And the same with commenting. Yeah. So you can go and comment on your buddy's stuff. That's fine. But when we're talking about engaging here, like it needs to be strategic. Like everything I'm talking about here has to be strategic, and strategic needs to be AKA your audience. So when I'm talking about commenting, you need to be commenting on industry, like what you're trying to sell, or if you're a marketer, like your industry, that whether it's other influencers, whether it's your prospects, whether it's just some randos, but at least it's industry specific or something that can tie back to what you do, Don't go and just leave 5 comments a day on your fellow, sales buddies from your past job. Like that's not going to do you any good. So
that's
very good point.
You're not trying to gain. I know it just sounds obvious, right? But at the same time, I see it all the time. I see it I see it all the time with SDRs who just don't realize, like they feel like they're following the playbook, but they've sort of skipped a pretty critical step. And the critical step in all marketing or sales for that matter is knowing who your audience is. And so that, that aspect of it is, it's not just going through the motions. It's actually saying, who is it and what do they care about? And how can I produce something that, is relevant or interesting to them?
Exactly.
But yeah, I've seen that, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I've seen that step.
No, I'm glad you did
so many times.
Yeah. No, I have too. It's funny you mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've just seen it in my own personal experience. Like when somebody reaches out to me and they're an SDR, I'll look at their, and they might have the perfectly manicured, profile because they've sort of followed all the steps. But then I go and look at actually what they're talking about, and I'm like, I don't want to have that conversation.
Right? Yeah, I feel like a lot of like marketing, like agency owners do a lot of that too. I feel like, like they'll talk about, growing an agency or stuff like that, and they're not even, they're going after a completely different target market. So I think it's kind of like they just get, can't see the forest through the trees type thing, right? So it's like you get so caught up and excited that you have this new playbook, like you mentioned, that you just want to go out there and do it. And so by nature, what we are good at, we want to talk about, right? So SDRs that are great at sales, they want to talk about sales because they got it down and they have routines. And so it's like an ego thing. Yeah, right? It's like, let me show you what I know, but you can still do that just in a different way because you still know a lot about the product you're selling or the services or the solutions. Like that's still something you know a lot about. So talk about that. Don't talk about your mad sales skills.
That's right. Yeah, you got to put your marketer hat on for a minute. That's right.
100%.
Cool.
Yeah, and that's part of like what we do too is like kind of turning a little bit turning these SDRs, BDRs into marketers. I mean, that's ultimately what we're trying to do here is like give them that marketing education, humanized marketing education, not just marketing in general, humanized, conversational, marketing education so they kind of can start thinking like that, when they're going out there and doing the outreach.
Yeah, that's right. So Mandy, this has been fantastic. For anybody who's listening, how would they get a hold of you? How would they
I know you're going to be really shocked when I tell you that LinkedIn is a great place to get a hold of me. So follow me on LinkedIn, reach out, send me a message, and then modgirlmarketing.com. You can go check out our website and send me an email through that. You can see our links for our other brand, Luminetics, but I am on LinkedIn a lot every single day for a while. And that is, that's my jam. That's where I live. So if you want to see what I'm doing on LinkedIn, feel free to reach out, send me a message, connect with me, and I'd be happy to chat with you.
That's awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Yep. Thank you, Eric.